We'll be doing it from here. So let's become aware of our breathing. With every exhalation, we allow ourselves to relax more deeply into this present moment. And we give thanks for this precious opportunity of this beautiful day to awaken more fully and more deeply to the truth that we are. Abiding in this present moment, the only holy moment is right now. And we give thanks for this gathering in this sacred sanctuary that is made sacred by our aspiration to unfold the highest wisdom and love and compassion for the benefit not only of ourselves and our loved ones, but for all living beings. We give thanks for this outer sanctuary that is a manifestation of the inner sanctuary, where we dwell always in unity with the infinite love that is the source of all life. So we give thanks for everyone who helps to make this outer sanctuary possible. And we give thanks for all of the teachings here and in all the world's wisdom traditions that turn our minds away from the delusion of separateness to the truth of the infinite interconnectedness of all life. We give thanks for all of the teachers in our life and the inner teacher ever shining in our heart. We give thanks for this beautiful earth, for all the rivers and mountains and oceans, the forests and prairies and all the animals celebrating their lives in the sky and in the water and on the earth. The beauty of creation and the whole human family on our shared adventure of awakening to the truth and reality of the inner Christ. That what we are was never born and will never die. And we give thanks knowing that the light that shines at the heart of the universe is shining in our heart and in every cell of our being and in every aspect of our lives, bringing every dimension of our life into harmony and into alignment with the spiritual purpose, with the mission that we are here in this incarnation to fulfill. So we just allow the music now to deepen our connection with the truth that we are. taking a moment together in the silence of pure potential. There is one life living through all of us, through all expressions of life. May all beings be happy and at peace. May all beings be free. May we all realize the original brightness of our minds and hearts. May we continue to work together to build a more enlightened society, a world that cares for everyone, a world that reflects the truth of the ever-present love and awareness of the inner Christ. Our true nature, through the power and presence of the infinite spirit of love and truth, we give thanks, knowing this is so, and so it is. Thank you, everyone, for joining in the meditation. And I'd like to play a short piece of music now before going into the talk. This will be a piece called The Garden, Le Jardin. And the melody first came to me many years ago when I was in the Ukraine, way back in the early 90s. And I just like to dedicate this piece to world peace and creating a awareness, as we said earlier today so beautifully, that peace is established in the divine true nature of life in all of our hearts. May it be so, and so it is. This is The Garden. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's really a delight to be here. And as you said, this is our first time at this church, and that's really unusual. Madeline and I have been traveling to Unity churches now for almost 40 years, and full time. And so we've been, I think, at this point, to more Unity churches than anyone in the history of the world. And so we're doing this whole tour. We left in November. We come back in April. We live in Northern California. We're going every Sunday to a Unity church across the country and back. This is the only time we're coming to a church that we haven't been to before. So we've always been before, but so it's really great. Yeah, I know. I'll have to come back again. It's really been a tremendously pleasant surprise to see the beautiful grounds and the space and the energy and the spirit of community and harmony that is so obviously present here. So thank you all for doing the inner work that I know is really required to manifest this kind of enthusiasm. And so amazing to hear about building a new building, too. Congratulations on that. That's really fantastic to hear. The ancient wisdom teachings that come through the Unity movement are so precious, and it's really up to us to keep them alive. And that's a great thing to do within our lifetime on this earth. Besides everything else we're doing, if we can make an effort to understand these and live them and propagate them for the next generation, it's very important. So thank you for the work you're doing in doing that. And I'd like to talk today about the inner guidance system that we have, we call it the inner genius, this inner capacity that we have to be creative and to be the unique being that we are. And I love the underlying foundation of Unity, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore's example. How many of you have actually been to Unity Village at some point in your life? A few of you, yeah. So try to get there if you can. It's in outside of Kansas City, Missouri. It's like Mecca. If you can go once in your life, try to get there because it's really beautiful. There's 1,000 acres of land. It's a wildlife sanctuary. The prayer towers there, the whole campus. Very inspiring. We've been there many times over the years, and it's wonderful to know that that's present. And Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were very humble, serious, American, normal kind of people who just had a knack of going persistently toward the truth and discovering, in many ways, the connections between the beautiful wisdom of the Christian tradition and some of the universal principles in all the world religions and the power of prayer to heal. All of this is, I think, really essential. And one of course, the main foundations in Unity is the idea that each one of us can connect directly with the Spirit. We don't need an intermediary. We don't need someone else to do it for us. We can connect ourselves with the inner wisdom. Charles is kind of famous for saying that each one of us can go straight to headquarters. And I always kind of chuckle at that because I think, well, for him it was easy. He could just go straight to headquarters by asking Myrtle what they should do. And I have it kind of easy too because I have Madeline. But for the underlying idea really is that each one of us can cultivate our capacity to connect with the dimension of consciousness that is beyond the personality. And that's referred to as the transpersonal dimension. The word person is an interesting word. It comes from the old Greek word that means mask. Per means through, and sona means sound. So like when you put a mask on, you're speaking through this mask. And so we all essentially, I think, are wearing a mask, and we identify with the name, the form, the whole collection of memories, who we are, who we think we are. That's the personal level. And that can be a problem. That can be an obstacle to our spirituality because it's the transpersonal dimension, the eternal dimension of consciousness that we can connect with, and not only within ourselves, but see that in others. And when we do that, we actually become healers ourselves, I think. We see, instead of reinforcing the limitations, we see the essential reality. But in order to do that, we need to do practice. We need to practice. How many of you have a spiritual practice of some kind that you kind of engage in regularly, every day, hopefully? Good. So that's one of the main things I think that we like to encourage is to start the day, especially if you can do it in the beginning of the day, is always the best thing because before anything else happens, get up a little earlier if you need to and practice bringing the mind into the present moment and opening to something beyond just the personality, to the gratitude and the sense of awareness that we are part of something far greater. This is a key thing, because when we're born on this planet, especially in our society, but I think just in general, we are lied to, essentially, by well-meaning people that look at us like we're this physical body. They think this is what we are. And so that's a mistake. We identify with the physical body, and in all the world spiritual traditions, the idea is if we make that mistake and we identify just with matter, the material form, then we're in a struggle, because then I need to protect myself. I need to get things. I need to keep things away. So we're either pushing and pulling, and when everyone's under the same delusion, then we're competing and manipulating and using each other as instruments to get what we want and keep away what we don't want. And then eventually those with more money and power start to dominate everybody else, and then we have this whole catastrophe that we call human life. But it's in the Buddhist tradition, it's called samsara. But it's really, the idea is that it's based on an illusion, and we can awaken out of that illusion. And when we do that, we help everyone to also do the same thing. It's kind of like when Madeline and I spent the last few days at Nokomis Beach, which isn't too far from here if you've ever been there. It's really beautiful. And if you're walking along the beach and you see a footprint in the sand, we don't walk up to the footprint and go, well, good morning, Harriet. How are you this morning? You see, that's just a footprint. It's not the person that made the footprint. And it's the same thing with us. This is a footprint waving. We don't see the being. We tend to identify with these footprints. And this is an ancient spiritual teaching, an ancient spiritual symbol. In the Buddhist tradition, there was the wheel, the tree, and the footprint were the three major symbols before they ever had the idea of having a statue or something like that. They had this ancient spiritual wisdom of understanding what it is that we are, that we're not the outer physical thing. We are what makes this possible. But in order to actually understand that directly, we need to practice a practice which is usually referred to as meditation or prayer, but it's basically quieting the mind, bringing the mind back. And it's not easy. My old Zen teacher used to say that when people start meditating, they discover that their mind is like a popcorn popping machine, and they can't find the off switch, right? It's just always got something else, wishing I could do and didn't do, and hope, and we're just continually bouncing between the past and the future, always thinking. So the main idea I'd like to share with you really today is that our inner wisdom, our intuition, is ever present. It's always available for us to guide us in our life. However, we've been taught that we're this thing, this object that was born and will die, that we have a name and a form and a collection, and that we have to rely on our conditioning, right? So think about it. When we get up in the morning and we live our life, there's something that's propelling us to do what we're doing, and that is typically, it's one of two things. It's either the cultural program, which we've all basically taken on. It's unavoidable, right? You land in a society as a little infant, and you learn their language becomes my language, and their food becomes my food, and their attitudes become my attitudes, and so we just take it all on, and we get programmed, and then we're just going along and doing what our parents said we should do, what our teachers said we should do, what the Walmart ads say we should do, what the ministers always said we should do. I don't mean Reverend Donna, but the other ministers, all these, there's this whole thing going on, and we're kind of following that program. And the whole idea is that besides that program, there's another force that can be guiding us and inspiring us, and that's our true nature, that we can connect with when we're quiet and we can hear the still small voice. And that's when we begin to connect with the inner genius, the music, the art, the writing, the speaking, whatever it is that is ours to do here on this earth during our lifetime. And it also connects us with something else very important, which is this inner wellspring of joy that's always present. And I think it's really important to remember that, because we have a tendency to understand, it's understandable, like we're bombarded with negative news all the time, right? There's always something terrible happening in the news, and we get that, and we see suffering, and we see all these problems, and we all have problems. And yet I think it's really important to realize that what we are is not this body. We are infinite and eternal consciousness that was never born and will never die, and we're manifesting for a few short decades through this physical footprint, this being that we think we are. And that one of the foundational attributes of this consciousness is joy that doesn't need any reason in the outer world at all. It's just present. We don't need to buy something to have it or have people compliment us. Just to be conscious. And especially, how many of you by now have noticed that the earth is beautiful? Anyone figure that out? We can open our eyes, we can experience, we can see, hear, taste, touch, and smell the beauty around us. We spent the night here in our little microvan and got up this morning and the birds were swarming around. I mean, just really, it was beautiful, just going into the tops of the trees and celebrating their lives and all calling to each other. And there's such beauty, and it's wonderful to see how you're honoring that beauty and building and participating in that. But when we understand, when we just open our eyes and are aware of the beauty of nature, of animals, of each other, real beauty, and we're beauty, children, all of us, tremendous beauty. And when we just see that and address that in each other, see the beauty in each other, and address the eternal dimension, because our life is so short. It's very transient, right? They interviewed the oldest living human being a couple of years ago. I remember reading the interview, and it was very simple. They just said, so you're 119 years old, this woman from Japan. You're 119 years old, so what's it like? The oldest living human being right now on planet Earth. And she said, all I can say is it goes by very fast. So it does, and we're going to be gone. I mean, that's one thing. There's an old Zen saying, being born as a human being is like stepping out on a ship and heading out across the water, and you know for sure it's going to sink. That's true. But that's why it's beautiful, right? You enjoy. Beauty is in transiency. There's no beauty in artificial things, but something that's transient. The sun, every day at Nokomis Beach, everybody cheers the sunset, right? It's just that precious thing. So the whole idea is that the beauty of our life is in the transiency of it. We only have a few days on this earth. I'm in my 70s. Just a few days ago, I was in my 20s, right? It just goes by so quickly. So every day is precious. So if we can just make a practice, first thing in the morning, as soon as we emerge out of sleep, we just give thanks. I get another day to learn, to grow, to remember, to participate, to contribute, to fulfill, to unfold, and let that be the current that carries us through the day. Be open to the new possibilities that are ever present, and to be a blessing in the world. Everyone we ever see is having problems, is suffering, right? There's no one in here that's never suffered, I'm sure, right? So to understand that, and that we can relieve each other's suffering, we can help each other in countless ways. That's really what the Unity teaching is about. It's not merely awakening out of delusion. It's being a force to help others, to be an example of that, and in our own unique way. And there's no reason we need to compare ourselves with anybody else. We each have our unique way of doing it. No one can paint paintings like Madeline. They're beautiful, they're amazing, but we each have the thing we can do that helps create the life for those around us. So I know if you found your way through the door here, that you have a unique story that got you here. And because the Unity is not really for everyone. It's really a journey of questioning the official narratives in our society. Remember what Krishnamurti said? He said, it's not a good idea to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society, right? So, so we don't want to be well-adjusted and just go along with everybody else is doing. So if you found your way through the door, you're already questioning a lot of the official narratives. That's really important to do that. That's why free speech is so important, and freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. These fundamental freedoms are critically important so that we can speak our truth and learn and live our lives. So you found your way through the door. And I'll just say, just in the last couple of minutes here of my time, a little bit about what got me in through the door. Because I was born and raised in Concord, Massachusetts, back in the 1950s. And I remember being raised there, it was kind of an interesting place historically, because there was the Revolutionary War, which was a big thing, really. I remember as a kid, April 19th is called Patriots' Day, and everybody would get, like my father would get dressed up in his Minuteman outfit, get the gun off the wall. We'd go down to the Old North Bridge in Concord. We would reenact the battle, send the Redcoats back to Boston, celebrate the Revolution. You know, if you have a problem, you should solve it. And so that, but then interestingly enough, later in Concord in the 1800s, there was another more spiritual, I guess you could say, revolution called the Transcendentalist movement. So I was born in Emerson Hospital and learned to swim in Walden Pond and went to Thoreau School and Alcott School. And so there was this whole feeling of the Transcendentalists, and they were the people, really, the very first ones in North America to bring the teachings of other religions and kind of integrate them into the Christian tradition that was already here. So they brought in, like, for example, from the Buddhist tradition, the idea of God as an infinite mind that we can learn to connect with. That is really our own mind, actually, when we get out of the way. Or the idea from the Taoist tradition of God as a universal principle that we can learn to harmonize our life with, and then our life will be in harmony with the larger order. Or the idea from the Hindu tradition, for example, that God is equally female as male. So this whole idea of the divine feminine, divine receptivity. So they were bringing these ideas in. And Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were very much affected. The Christian Science, I think, was part of this, and spiritual healing. But for me, I went away to college in Maine, Colby College. I met Colby here. And anyway, I went to Colby College in Maine. But I remember starting to read these books and getting very interested, and that led me to a book that some of you may have heard of. It's an old book from the 1890s called Cosmic Consciousness, written by a guy named Richard Buck. But anyway, he said basically that most people live in what he called the state of self-consciousness. We basically go around and we care about ourselves and maybe a little family or tribe, but basically it's this kind of attitude. But he said a few rare human beings had attained what he called cosmic consciousness, people like Jesus and the Buddha and great sages and saints and poets and mystics and prophets from various times, both men and women. And he said the thing is, these people got out of that prison of self-consciousness and lived their lives to bless others. They lost this sort of pettiness of caring mainly about themselves and lived their lives without fear of death, with a great loving kindness for all living beings, and with a tremendous sense of joy and a moral elevation, he talked about, and intellectual illumination. And so I remember reading this, and the main point he said was, these are not anomalies and just strange one-offs. It is the destiny of every human being to attain cosmic consciousness. This is really our purpose, our work here. And that's the one way that we can actually contribute, in the most powerful way we can contribute to the healing of our world and to be part of the solution to the problems here, is through this effort. So I remember going back home and breaks and saying to my parents, we're here to attain cosmic consciousness, We're not just here to, And my father was saying, well, that education of yours up there in Maine, it's costing me quite a lot of money. I was not going to help you get ahead in the world. And but he understood somewhat. He taught me to play the piano. My mother was an artist. And to my delight, my younger brother, Ed, said, yes, let's attain cosmic consciousness. Let's do it. And so we told our parents we were going to attain cosmic consciousness now. And they said, well, so what are you going to do? And we thought about it pretty hard for a while. And I had just graduated from Colby, so we were just in our, I think he was just 20, I was 22, I just turned 22. And we decided we knew what to do. There's one sure way to attain cosmic consciousness. Back in 1975 anyway, and that is go to California. So we decided we would, but we were going to do it the way the sadhus of India, because we were reading these books about these Indian sages and things. So we thought we'll just walk with no money to California. And so I remember walking down the driveway. My father actually, gave us they gave us, their blessing. My father said, every man must march to the beat of his drum. He actually quoted Thoreau, which surprised me. And we left with some fresh baked cookies from my mother in our backpacks, and we headed out. And we worked our way. Slowly, we just walked, maybe 15 or 20 miles a day. We got as far as Buffalo. And It was getting cold. It was October. We were in Buffalo. It was like already freezing. I remember thinking, I have a bachelor's degree from a pretty good school. Let's forget that plan and let's head south. So because we really we just walked. So we ended up walking down all the way across upstate New York into Pennsylvania, all the way across Pennsylvania into West Virginia, down through West Virginia. They said the first day we got into West Virginia, they said, boys, you're in the Bible Belt. And I didn't know what that meant. I was an Episcopalian from New England, but I found out what that meant, which they try to save you every night, And we were doing this practice that we'd heard, that we learned about that was recommended by a man named Ramana Maharshi from India, who said to do self-inquiry and go deeper and deeper. The question of who am I? What am I? Don't just stay at a shallow surface, but find out. That was our meditation. So we worked our way into Kentucky and through Appalachia. We had so many adventures, but eventually we got into Tennessee, and south of Nashville, there was a community there called The Farm. And we went to the farm. We heard about it. We went there, and that farm was the largest hippie commune in the world, 900 people, and they were all from California. So there they were. And we stayed there for a while, and they were all vegetarians, and that was it. And Madeline and I both, I found out years later, but I was there in 1975, yeah. And I never ate meat in my life since being with them. They were all vegetarians. But we stayed there for a while, and then we went a little farther down into Alabama, in Huntsville. There was a Zen Buddhist center there, and we ended up staying there and meditating like from 6 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, just trying to find out, who am I? And we eventually, a few years later, I got out to San Francisco, and I was living in these different meditation centers, and then eventually became a Zen monk in Korea, shaved my head, and lived over there in South Korea, and eventually came back and thought, well, I'll get my PhD at Berkeley. I taught college for a number of years. But early on in that, I discovered unity, and when I was in Alabama and also in Atlanta. And I realized that the unity movement is incredibly precious because it has all of the depth and wisdom of the great spiritual traditions of the world, and it's in a platform where it's accessible to us as Americans, that in a really positive way. And so after realizing that I didn't really want to teach college after a number of years, I ended up moving into a 1971 Volkswagen bus and going to Unity churches, starting way back in 1990. And a couple of years later, I met Madeline in Switzerland. I always say the smartest thing I ever did was marrying Madeline. We've been married for 33 years now, so it's been so great. Yeah, and so we've been going to Unity churches. We lived full-time in an RV for 17 years with no house, just every Sunday at a Unity church around the United States, all 50 states, and except for North Dakota, didn't have one. But when they get one, we'll be there. And but I just want to close with just this idea that when we are all on a spiritual adventure, a spiritual practice, a spiritual path, and each one of us has it in our own way. But the Unity movement has a fantastic foundation of wisdom that's ancient and totally relevant, and it's transformational. And so the more that we can do our best to do the inner work, to understand these teachings, to live these teachings, to quiet our mind and connect with the eternal inner wisdom and live that, and then also help build an outer expression, a community of people who are supporting this teaching. In the Buddhist tradition, for example, it was neat to hear you're going to be having the Buddhist monks here. I did a walk actually from LA to New York City with Buddhist monks way back in when that was. That was in 1990, I think. For the environment, but the idea in the Buddhist tradition, one of them, it's also in the Christian tradition as well, but there's in the Buddhist tradition there's the idea of the three jewels, the three precious, the most important things, and the three jewels are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So what that means is the Buddha means what we would call the inner Christ, the eternal wisdom that is our true nature. The Dharma means teachings, the teachings that help guide us in that direction to awaken out of this delusion that we're being bombarded with by the media and everything else. So there's the Buddha, the Dharma, the teachings, and then the third jewel is the Sangha. The Sangha is the community of people who are interested in the teachings and in awakening to their Christ or the true nature. And the Buddha said something very interesting. He said, if there is no Sangha, there'll be no Buddha and no Dharma. So it's really important that we understand the importance of the Sangha, the community, that we support each other, support the community, build this community, because we become like the people we hang out with. That's called right association. So the more we can build a spiritual community and feed that in every way, the more we create something that will help transform our society in a positive way. And if we live our lives, our short lives, in order to do this, we will have lived our lives very well. So I want to thank all of you for the efforts you're making. No effort is ever lost. It all helps. Bless you all. Thank you so much. And go forth and multiply the message. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Will. It's a beautiful message. Yeah. Yeah. What are we doing? Oh, yeah. All right. However you give, because it takes all of us to support the ministry here, whether you give online or through Breeze or on a Sunday, to bring the awareness of your gift to this community, to this Sangha, and imagine it between your hands, filled to overflowing with divine love through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, that this is so. Amen.